couple options here for sleeping bags. One, this is a new one that I got just recently. It's a classic mummy bag. It's definitely for warmer climates. For warmer nights sleeping in colder climates. And it's a great bag. I'd recommend it. It folds up into a smaller stuff sack like this. What I actually did on one of them is I put it into an 8-liter waterproof bag, and that seemed to work out pretty good. And there again, it added a little bit of weight doing that. But one thing I've learned over the years is there's nothing worse than a wet sleeping bag when you're ready to go to sleep. Because if your sleeping bag's wet, you are not going to be dry and you're going to be cold all night long. So throwing that into that bag there has been worth it for me. This thing, though, has been a pretty good sleeping bag for the couple of years I've had it. It's one, too, that all you got to do is you just stuff it inside here like this. And away you go. There you go. I've actually got another thing that's like a cinch sack that'll actually push this down a little bit smaller. Again, just to conserve some space in my pack. It gets it down to, about that size right there. One thing with these, you notice I had it out to begin with. I actually have this hanging on a hanger in my closet. You always want to store things like sleeping bags. The first air mattress that I had, I stored that inflated in the top of my closet because when they're stored compressed, it can break down the fibers in the sleeping bag. With those, it kind of isn't good for the cells inside there. Other ones, like the one that I blew up, that one, there's nothing to it other than the containers. You can store that one in a storage bag. So again, there's one sleeping bag. They've got a cooling rating on there. They'll say good to 30 degrees. Most experts will tell you that that's like the maximum that you want to go down to. You're not going to be warm at that temperature. You're going to be warm probably about 5 to 10 degrees above that. But if you're going to be going in the mountains and it's regularly getting into the 30s and 40s at night, this 30 degree sleeping bag I found is good for me. I take some of my clothes and stick it in around me, and that kind of forms some little air pockets that helps keep me warm as well. So what else do we have here? Let's find out. I got another one here. This one is my liner. It's a liner that some people would put inside another sleeping bag, and you certainly could use it for that. This one's good down to 55 degrees. I found there's some places where I hike where it gets down to the upper 50s. This is all I need. Again, if I put a couple of pieces of clothing inside, if it all of a sudden gets one cold night, it works out well for me. But this one is really has really been a good sleeping bag for me in places like when I go camping up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan or in northern Minnesota. If I'm along the lake and the lights are in the mid to upper 50s, this is perfectly fine. The other great thing about this is the size, and I'll show you how big this can be later in the video. Oh, why not? Let's do it now, huh? And you'll notice something I did on this one that I didn't do on the last one is I started at the feet and moved to the head so that the air didn't get stuck in it. I made that mistake. Some of you, pros probably realize that when I did the first sleeping bag, but this one I did so the air gets pushed out much easier and you don't pop or rip your sleeping bag. But there's the size of this thing. And again, if I get this down inside something, it's much smaller. It's probably about the size of a football. And it typically is a good size to just fit right in your pack. The other one here, to give you a size comparison, that's about what you're looking at right there. Even with this compressed down a bit. This one's still a good one if you can get away with it. All right, so one other option here that I got is this is just a cotton fleece. I've taken this before. I mean, if you were going to be in some really, warm weather camping, this would work. This is really good because it's got a zipper all the way down the side. You can start with this thing unzipped and just lay out on top of it or lay, just inside of it. But later in the evening, you can pull up the zipper and you can be perfectly warm. This is the disadvantage of this one. If this one gets wet, it's going to be wet for a day or two. And so I typically don't take this on too many backcountry excursions. Maybe if we're doing some light camping somewhere else or just a short trip and it's not going to rain, then it's a possibility for me. So another luxury item for some people, but for an old guy like me, it's a necessity. It's a pillow. This is a self-inflating pillow. It's mostly got, I believe it's got some little foam popcorny kind of things in there. And so this thing will crush down pretty good size. It's one of those things you need more than 2 hands for. Now this is something I also store inflated, if you will, because you don't want to have those too crushed. I did that once. I left it in this thing, and when I went to inflate it, it took about 4 hours, and it still wasn't all the way up to where it needed to be. So I learned my lesson. I store it in a bin with some of my camping equipment in the basement. But there again, there you go. Just about the size of a football, and it's fairly lightweight. This thing definitely does not weigh a pound. It's probably like 8 to 10 ounces right here. Now, some people will tell you that, why bring a pillow when you've got a sweatshirt or something with you? And I do use this like as a second pillow. Sometimes the ground you're on, I got to prop up my neck a little more, do something like that. This is my hooded sweatshirt that I typically take on the trip. The other thing I found, though, is that if it's a colder night than what you're planning on, and you're counting on this for a pillow, you don't have it to wear. And so the hood is nice because, if I'm using that lightweight sleeping bag liner and it's not keeping me warm, I've got this hood to keep my head warm as well. And so, again, I'll use this as a supplemental to kind of brace myself up in different ways. Or sometimes if I roll on my side, it's nice to tuck this thing under my head so my head's not drooping down like that. But, some people just take their sweatshirt and use it for a pillow. Nothing wrong with that. And so, use that as an option if that's what you want to do. For me, I like having a pillow. That's me. We'll see you on the trail. An 8-liter you can store that one at its storage bag. But anyway, a couple options here for sleeping bag. So that's something. But some people will just sweat it.